Right. You said once that sexual energy and spiritual energy is the same. You tuned in, tapped on, turned on.
Well, when you are really in alignment, that is the purest form of what humans call sexual energy.
Well, that's basically my question, because given the amount of sexual activity on this planet at any given point of time, why is humanity not more enlightened?
Because there is sex inside the vortex and there is sex outside the vortex.
Yeah.
A lot of sex is needy, a lot of sex is controlling, a lot of sex is demanded, a lot of sex is perfunctory, a lot of sex is habitual. It's teenage sex you want. that alignment and inclination that comes from alignment.
So the sexual energy you referred to as being a spiritual energy, that's when you're in the vortex.
Well, we're not really talking so much about sexual energy. Sex is like the word God. In that most people, when they use the word, don't mean what we mean when we use the word. In other words, and so we don't use the word God because it just evokes from most people all kinds of distortion that isn't even close to what we know as source energy. And sexuality or sex is the same sort of thing. It usually stirs in most people something that's not even close to what. And so when we're talking about alignment, we're talking about let's start in another place. When you feel negative emotion, it always means that the way you are approaching a subject is very different from the way the source within you feels about it. And when you feel wonderful, it means that the way you're thinking about a subject is in alignment with what source feels about it. Well, when you look at all of the rules and punishments and taboos and regulations and biases and criticism that follows the subject of sexuality, it's very rare to find a healthy-minded person who is thinking about sexuality. You're just hung up about so many things and pushing hard against so many things. Fortunately, in the process of sexuality itself, Napoleon Hill wrote a wonderful book called Think and Grow Rich, and it evolved, and much of what he meant to say was edited from it. But there was a chapter called Sexual Transmutation, and his point in this book was if you could discover the alignment that you often can discover through sexuality and understand what it is and transmute it through other subjects, that it would give you benefit. And here's what he meant by that. In the process of the physical intertwining, often there are elements in place that put you in alignment with who you really are. Most important, and this is what we meant, we're playing about the idea of the early sexual encounters. As you're rendezvousing with someone that you have not developed patterns of resistance about. In other words, you haven't been critical. You don't know so much about them. You're not, and so they're new, and because they're new, you're fresher in your appreciation of them. Also, the physical intertwining and the act of physical sexuality in and of itself is distracting, in the sense that if you're focused upon that, you're not focused upon the bills you can't pay or who's mad at you or that sort of thing. So there is the potential of being in a more distracted and therefore less resistant place. And two of you working in concert together can build in that synergy. In other words, nothing is more delicious than an orgasm of two people that is coming together. And the reason that it happens is because they are focused mutually upon a singular idea. And that singular idea is pleasure for me and pleasure for you. In other words, there is so much harmony that is in all of that. But even as these words are flowing through, there are all kinds of people who just don't want to talk about that. And so that's the answer to your question, why the planet is not more spiritually enlightened. A question that is even more at the basis of that question is, why aren't more people relaxed into their natural state of well-being? And so when you look, the animals of your planet give you a much better understanding, because they're not hung up on it. They don't have all these rules about it. They live more in the moment. They let the biology of their beings carry them. In other words, it is something that is inspired, not something that is demanded. The natural biology of the female who is in heat actually sends a vibrational signal to the male who wants to co-create. There are all kinds of wonderful sexual energies that happen, that when you're tuned into the wholeness of who you are, you feel the inspiration of that. Many people feel sexual energy moving when they meditate. Because as they come into alignment, the wholeness of who they are is moving through them, you see. A lot of people begin to feel that sexual energy, and they are repelled by it, or they are worried about it, or they're put off by it because they don't understand it. Most people are not even coming close to allowing themselves the connection to the source that is within them. And once you begin to understand this vortex, and you deliberately work to come into alignment with that which is your vortex, and then from inside the vortex you have your conversations, from inside the vortex you have your physical intertwinings, from inside the vortex you create your music, you play your music. In other words, everything's better from inside the vortex, and sex is just one of those things.
So what you said, teenage sex is closer to spirituality than...
Well, we just mean that teenagers are they are more biologically inspired and less structured, and there are a lot of obedient teenagers who are very frustrated.
Okay, I'll get it. Do I get to ask another question?
Yes, certainly.
That's about animals. That's not related.
In fact, we've been saying about teenagers that you can orchestrate it all you want. In other words, there are all kinds of taboos that you can put on, but the inspiration that is coming forth from within them is going to reign supreme. And as those who are trying to control them, you might as well give it up.
Okay. The second question I have is about animals. Our purpose is expansion and is joy and growing. Would my inner being, Esther's inner being, consider re-emerging into physical as an animal being, would that be considered an expansion? If, like, I decide next lifetime.
Well, first of all, it won't happen in that way. But there's a sort of flawed premise that you are beginning with. This energy stream, in other words, the energy of Abraham, the energy of that which we are, is present in humans, but it's also present in beasts. In other words, this stream of energy is present in everyone. And the animals do a much better job of aligning with that energy than the humans do.
Well, exactly.
So if you're talking in terms of hierarchy, which humans tend to do, or even excellence of accomplishment, which humans tend to do, the benefit that the animals have, and it is a benefit that is very, very significant over what humans are experiencing, is that the animal is much more often in the vortex. It's rare for an animal to not be in the vortex. Even when he's being chased down and is going to be someone's lunch, he is not outside the vortex. In other words, his inspiration is coming from that non-physical intention. And so the advantage that humans have is that you do a better job of step one. In other words, humans explore more contrast and do so with more deliberateness, and therefore put more precision into the vortex. And so humans actually call for more expansion, while the animal is more of a step three. You know what we are meaning? The step one is the contrast caused you to ask. You can't stop from doing that, and everyone does it. All species do it, but humans do it more because you are focused more specifically about more things. Step 2 is accomplished by source. Step 2 is the answering of the question, or the being the answer to the question, or the being the solution to the problem. Step 3 is you must come into alignment with that which has already been accomplished inside the vortex. So the animals of your planet, we lovingly refer to them as the beasts of your planet. They are much more in the step 3 allowing part. In other words, and it would be fair to say that the reason that they are more allowing is because they are not so specifically focused on things. They're not worried about why you're not home yet. In fact, in most cases, not even noticing that you're not home yet, and so forth. They are not petty about things. They don't hold grudges. They are living more in the moment, and they are, for the most part, really tuned into who they are. And they are much more emotional than anyone gives them credit for, because their desire to feel good is a very strong impulse within them that has not been muted by an effort to be obedient and to keep rules.
But
in other words, they're not sexually hung up.
But wouldn't it be an expansion for a human being to then reincarnate as an animal, because they clearly...
It would be an expansion for a human being to allow his expansion through paying attention to the way he feels. So it would be an expansion for a human being to be more animal-like, in the sense that you are holding fewer grudges and pushing against fewer things. Okay. But you really don't need to come back as a rabbit in order to do that.
That's what I wanted to know, yeah. The rabbit
and you're not going to do that. In other words, you're because there is no and there is no moving back from that which you have become. But we are presenting those words very deliberately, because we don't want to imply that the beast is less than that which you are. It is a different intention with which he has come forth, you see. Different intention. And you've got to accept that which is source, who is the launcher of the intentions, has launched intentions for balance. In other words, there is a balance in this environment that makes everyone part of the delicious balance. And there is not higher or lower, more advanced or less advanced. It's just co-creating for the reveling and the joyous expansion of all that exists. So a better way to look at it is, and this will satisfy your question in a powerful way, we'll start here by saying that you come forth as this magnificent human, but part of the consciousness that is you is also coming forth as your cat, as your dog, as other species upon the planet. And so you're already doing some of all of that. Now, let's step back from that and acknowledge that you're not doing that from your human point of view. You did that from your source energy point of view. So from the source energy point of view, all of the bases are covered. So the answer to your question is yes. But when you as a human, or you as a rabbit, as you as anyone who are physically focused, are in alignment with who you really are, then you've got the best of all of it anyway. And don't you just know that most of those animals with whom you are co-creating know everything that you know? Can't you see it in their eyes? Don't you know how smart they are? Can't you feel? Even though they're not verbalizing to you in the way that you are, much of your conversation takes you out of the vortex, not in, you see. So it's all working. We are all part of all of that. However, you in this physical format have come to focus in this physical format. You've come to don this personality, to be this person that you are, to have this exposure to life, and to launch these rockets of desires, and to use the guidance system that you were born with, to understand and to recognize your vibrational relationship, and to work to come into alignment with that which you are. And as a human, when you come into alignment with all that you are, you gain the insight and instinctual understanding that every beast on the planet has as well. You see, it's not either or. When you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, you have access to all of it. All of it, you see. Whether you are a rabbit or a human, you have access to all of it. Good to know?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Very good. Now what? On the aisle, second row.
Nice and close. There we go. Thanks.